We are live. What's good, family? What's good? What's good?
What's
My name
up?
is Ro. That is Kayla. We just want to welcome you to another episode of the Raney and Ro Show.
Welcome. I'm Kayla Raney, and this is the podcast for the professionally curious and the creative minded.
Yes, yes, yes. And today we are going to be talking about work-life balance, right? We're going to talk about work. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about how we balance the two as creatives. But
Yes.
before we get into our main topic, we like to talk about what is inspiring us from the week. So, Kayla, as usual, you're going to go
Whew.
first. What's
Well,
inspiring you?
last week it was smutty audiobooks. This week it's mysterious audiobooks.
Okay.
I am listening to this series called The Inheritance Games. And
Yes.
have you read it?
Yes, I read
Okay.
the first one. Yep, yep, yep.
Yes, I just finished it like last night at 4 a.m. or something,
Yes, yes,
and it was really good. I was surprised.
yep,
I love the movie Blades Out that it's kind of compared
yeah,
to,
yeah.
and that sort
Knives
of
Out.
like,
Yep.
yeah, that like kind of Agatha Christie, but like in the new age mystery really appeals to me. I was
Right,
afraid it was gonna be a little young for me at first. I was kind of like, ooh, usually when the characters are under the age of 19, I'm like, I feel weird reading this. But
right, right.
it was good. I'm excited. I have the next one lined up and I'm ready. So that's what's like keeping me going this week. What about you?
Yeah. So, first of all, I want to say I really love that book. I haven't read the second one yet, but I really
I haven't
enjoyed it.
either.
So,
Yeah.
we gotta read it together. We should read it
We'll
together
have to listen to it together. Yes.
for sure, for sure. What's been inspiring me? So I was listening to a podcast and um, they were talking about who you are as a writer, like
Yeah.
why do you write, who you are as a writer, like how do you communicate your why. And
Yeah.
it started to make me feel a little intimidated because I'm like, I don't really know what that
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand what he was saying, but he began to give examples of what that looks like. And
Right.
when he gave those examples, I was like, oh, I know what that is for me, right? And so what it looks like for me is I write about fatherhood, I write about generational issues, right? Like things being
Baggage.
passed down, tradition, right? Right, trauma.
Yeah.
Um, and I write about heroes that wouldn't necessarily choose this life if it wasn't
Yeah.
for something pulling them into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really been inspiring me because it's been sort of helping me sort of crystallize the when I have an idea, okay, why am I being drawn to this idea? You know, what is
Right. Right.
about this idea is making me want to work on this. And
Yeah.
knowing that is allowing me to really, hone in on the places that I really want to, create and the ideas that I really want to see made. So that's really been big time for me this week. So
I love that. You're always so much more profound than I am and what's
stop
inspiring you this week. I'm always just like, eh, whatever I'm listening to,
but
whatever
that's
books
good
I'm
though.
filling my
That's
hours
good.
with.
Like I said last week, there's no judgment. Whatever's inspiring you is what's inspiring you. We can't
Yes.
help that.
Hi.
It is what it is. Cool. So you ready, Kayla, to jump into our topic?
Let's do it.
All right. So work-life balance. Our first question that we want to tackle is what does balance mean to you, Kayla?
Define this question for me.
So
Are
the
we, are, yeah.
when you say work-life balance, right?
Uh-huh.
What does that mean to you? Like when somebody says that, what are the thoughts that go through your head about work-life balance? Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
I mean, I have an ideal. I have like a picture perfect, this is what work life balance would look like if I wasn't one, the person that I am, and two, work in the industry that I work in. And I'm a freelancer, so I make my own hours. I would probably preferably work from like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, have time to like grocery shop, cook dinner, go like out and play some tennis, come home, take care of
Right.
the hubby, and like settle in for a night.
Right.
But that's just never going to be reality for me. So balance is like constantly being redefined for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, when I think about work-life balance, I guess it's similar to what you said, but I think about, you know, you have your work time and then you have your family time and then you have your
Yeah.
everything is scheduled out,
And
everything's getting done.
compartmentalized and
Right, right.
separate.
All
Yeah.
your deadlines are met, all the money's coming in when it's supposed to come
Right.
in, and
Right.
bills are getting paid, and everything is exactly the way it's supposed
The
to be.
creator utopia.
It's the utopia. And so you mentioned something that sort of leads us into another question that we have is balance achievable?
Yeah.
So you said that'll never be your life. Why do you say that?
So I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of the type of person that I am. I'm,
Mm,
as you know, and as most people who know me personally know, I'm extremely obsessive. I
mm,
am like, once I am working on a project, once I am involved in something that I'm really invested in creatively, it's really hard, even if I am consciously trying to set boundaries, like I only work from these hours to these hours, I find myself pushing my own boundaries all the time because I'm so obsessive,
mm,
or because I get so involved in my process that sometimes my productivity can suffer because of it. Um, and I'm also somebody who wears so many hats that even I forget that, my life isn't just as a studio artist. I'm
mm.
also my own bookkeeper. I'm also my own like networking professional. I have client meetings that are local. I have client meetings that are international. Like there's so many parts of my studio practice that have to come together for me to be successful,
Right,
that I can't cram it into that ideal box of
right,
balance.
right, right.
And when I say that like my definition of balance is changing constantly, it is I figure out week to week, month to month, depending on what my project load looks like, what is actually an achievable approximation of
Mm.
balance. It starts coming down to a list of priorities and less like the idealism of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm
So
sure like you have a whole different experience as somebody with like a family and
yeah, I mean, I think for me, I don't really even think about balance, like trying
yeah,
to keep balance, right? I think
yeah.
about um and I talked about this before, but I think about being present with whatever it is that I'm doing, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
if I'm writing from 9 to 11,
Right.
then I'm present in doing that writing time. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And then
Mhm.
when that's done, and I got to pick the kids up from daycare, or I'm, taking the kids to wherever, like what I'm present with that. And I'm not thinking about my writing, and I'm not, now granted, this doesn't always work out exactly the way I
Right.
want it to work. But I
Yeah.
think when I get too preoccupied with trying to be balanced,
Mhm.
that's when I begin to lose balance. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and so for me, what that looks like, our next question is, what does life look like when work and life is out of balance? For me, what
Yeah.
that looks like is I get frustrated, like
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
I don't if I go like a day without writing, I
Yeah.
can feel there's like an agitation that I have,
Yeah. Yeah.
just dealing with the family. And I'm, if I'm, cooking dinner, or well, not cooking dinner,
Right.
if I'm making lunch, or if I'm, making whatever, like if I'm
Are
changing
you
a diaper.
not trusted to cook dinner? Is that
Yeah. So I don't usually cook dinner. I don't usually cook dinner. I make like peanut butter
Okay,
and
my
jelly
husband's not
sandwiches.
allowed to either, so I
Yeah.
understand.
But if I'm like, I might be like changing a diaper, but while I'm
Yeah.
changing that
Yeah.
diaper, like I'm secretly upset because I haven't written today. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
so I realize, like, for me, when I'm out of balance, it's a lack of presence
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I'm doing in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about you? What's your experience like with that?
Mm, See, I think you and I look at it from slightly different perspectives because to me, when I am somehow achieving as close to like balance as I think I can get, it means I have time to take care of myself. I have time to go and do things like exercise and play tennis. I am making time to go to bed at a decent hour. I have time to go and like visit my mom or like have lunch with a friend and still get all of the things that I need to get done in my studio. When I am out of balance is really when I'm overwhelmed. It's less about me being like present in my studio practice because that's very much so like a switch that I can kind of turn off and on. And you and I have talked about that. Like I separate my art making
Right.
from my day job, which
Yeah.
is like comics and illustration. So
Yeah.
I have like a mindset that I'm in between like this hour and this hour. And when I have and I do this like often, and I'm the first one to admit it. When I bite off more than I can chew, and I'm juggling 7 projects at one time, because I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool. Oh, that sounds really cool. Oh, I really like that one. Like, oh yeah, I got you. Like, we did this 3 months ago. Let's do it
Right.
again."
Right.
You know, when I am piling too many things on my plate, when I have deadlines that just happen to be overlapping, when I become too obsessive over one project, so like another project kind of falls behind,
Mhm.
I find myself staying up close to all nighters, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm crawling into bed for like a 2 hour nap before I get up and I try to start it all over again. I'm not exercising. I'm not taking my dogs out for walks. I'm not taking my like self-care breaks. I'm not doing the things that keep me feeling like a whole human being.
Mhm.
And it definitely leads to like I'm stressed, I'm agitated, I'm like I know for a fact that like my husband gets the brunt of it because he's just closest in proximity, poor guy.
Right. Right. Right.
you know, and my health, like my health really suffers from it too. Like I have a tendency to get sick, like if I'm stressing myself out, I have a tendency to be super run down. It takes me a long time to kind of like catch up after I've worked myself up into that sort
Yeah.
of off balance mode.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think it might look like that for everybody. Like you sort of
Yeah,
lose sight of, yourself and what you need, and just the little things, like you said, that keep you feeling whole,
yes,
right? That keep you
yes,
feeling like an entire human being. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Anyway, I was listening to a podcast, and he said he tells writers that you're a human first and
yeah,
you're a writer second. And I think, moving to our next question, what is the most difficult part of keeping balance? For me,
right,
is I don't always see my writing as my work. And
yeah,
so what
yeah,
happens is I will just go and go and go and go and go,
right,
but I'm
right,
not realizing that you actually need to take a break. You need to step back from this.
yes,
You need to
yes,
do other things, like you said, exercise, and
yeah,
just see the world, live your life outside of sitting at
right,
the keyboard and writing and putting words down, because that's also a part of writing, is living your life and having friends and building relationships and all that type of stuff.
right.
And so, yeah, go ahead, Kayla. What are you gonna say?
Oh, I was just, I'm agreeing with you. Like, I think a lot of it comes from the fact that creatives have a tendency to be very self-driven people. We have had to kind of automate a lot of our drive to push us as hard as if we were, employees
Right.
or you know, even if we didn't make our livelihood doing this, we would push ourselves just as hard because it's something inside of us as creatives that is telling us you have to do this or else you don't feel right. And I mean, I know that you've spoken a lot about how if you go without writing, like you can feel it. It's like under your skin. And it's the same for me. If I went without drawing for even like a day, I think I would get like the shakes because it would just be so disconcerting to like my sense of identity.
Yeah.
And I think that we can get so easily wrapped up in the blurring of the lines between work and creative practice
Mm,
that our own mental health can really suffer because of that, you know. And that is something that I really struggled with a lot as a young artist because I truly believed that I had to suffer to make good art.
yeah.
I really believed that that was the core value of my like driving force was if I'm not uncomfortable, if I'm not hurting, if I'm not feeling like I'm at the bottom of a
Right.
pit trying to
Right.
like claw my way out,
Am I really
then
doing
am I really doing it?
it? Right.
Exactly. Exactly. And there is this kind of like glamorization of that, right? In media, in the way
Yeah.
that we idolize artists who are on the grind like
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to take a step back and realize, you know, one, we are not all built the same. Some of
Yeah.
us have like different thresholds. And two, it's also not fucking healthy. I
Right.
know we have these ideas built into us that it's supposed to be like that, but it's just not supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
just want
yeah,
to go deeper. I want to go deeper on something that you mentioned when you
yeah,
said the blurring of the lines between work and the creative practice.
yeah. I could see your eyes light up. I knew that
Yeah,
that was a
yeah. Can you talk about that a little more?
yeah. So I don't know if this is the same for you as a writer, but for me, I can get so caught up in just the act of drawing, in just like the process of making marks or figuring out the right way to pose a body to make sure that it's expressing what I need it to express, or getting caught up in just like the texture of a building or how what I'm drawing relates to a deeper conceptual
Mm,
process that I'm working with, you know, in a storyline. I can get so drawn into that that I forget that I'm billing hours. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I forget that I have put a monetary value on the time that I'm spending doing this. And this is like a really big problem that I have where I will say, well, I'm doing this and I've priced it at 6 studio hours, but I'll spend 15 on it
Right.
because I get so wrapped up and I forget that I crossed that line
Yeah.
into I'm no longer doing this as a like part of my job. I'm doing this because I'm an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of got its pros and cons, right? Like on one hand, I'm putting myself into this cycle of stretching myself thin over a project, but I'm putting so much of myself into it that it feels like it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting about that is as a writer, I haven't had a lot of clients that I write
Mm-hmm.
for. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So for me, there hasn't been a lot of being paid to do what I'm doing,
right.
which makes it more difficult to
Mm, yes,
delineate between
yes,
what's work and what's
yeah,
care. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because nobody's paying me anything right now. You know what I'm saying?
right,
So,
right,
so, um, so I think that's a really interesting line, that you put there.
yeah,
But I also think that's a symptom of, and we've talked about this before, but when
right,
we talk about capitalism, right, and we talk
yeah,
about, you know, art and we talk about money and we talk about
Yeah.
getting paid for your art, how
Yeah.
do you quantify,
Right.
that, like your page rate, for example, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
well, it's not just like I may be able to draw, you may be able to draw something
Right.
in 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
But people aren't paying for that 2 seconds. They're not paying for the time that it takes you to do that. They're paying you
Exactly.
for the years and the work that you put in to get to that place
Yeah.
so that you could do
Mhm.
it in 2 seconds. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think when we talk about art and then we talk about money and then we talk about work and we talk about the creative practice, it just becomes so murky
It's
sometimes.
complicated. It's
It's complicated
convoluted. Yeah. Yeah.
for
It's
sure.
interesting because like it makes me, now that I work in comics full time, I'm constantly reflecting back on my time as a painter, as a
Yeah,
gallery artist. And I
yeah,
think it's a little bit more parallel to your experiences as a writer because when I was working as a painter, unless I was commissioned, I was usually just making art to put in shows with the hope that somebody would want to buy them.
yeah,
So it's even more of this, it's like what you're talking about. There's this issue of how do you delineate between the time that is work, the time that is just creative, like art making, and
right,
the time that is, you know, financing your livelihood.
right.
Um, and I find that experience echoed in comics when I do like character studies or environmental studies or sketches for like hours and hours. The amount of research that I put into fucking reference photos is
Yeah,
ungodly.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the hours that I spend trying to figure out like the perfect way to set up a scene and the
yeah,
perfect like body pose
right,
is obscene.
yeah,
And so like, but those aren't hours that I'm billing for, just like the 7 months that I spent on a Beatrice and the Beast painting. I can't say, well, I charged $30 an hour, and over the course of 7 months, I probably spent over 6,000 hours on this painting.
right,
I can't do that. I can't
yeah,
quantify that and say, here's a dollar value. Like, I'm
right.
okay, but I'm not like, pay me $1.5 million for this painting good, you know?
Right, right, yeah. Um, and I mean, I totally get that. I totally get that. And so I think moving into our last question,
Yeah.
when you find yourself out of balance, when you start to feel, some of those things that we talked about earlier, when you start to feel that, how do you get out of that space? Do you have any tactics for, getting that balance back?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, am I good at using them? I don't know. I mean,
Well, that's not the question right now. That's not the
yeah, yeah,
question.
like I feel like I'm 50-50. I'm like either in a state of constant panic or like
Yeah,
I'm in a
yeah,
state of I got this, I'm good.
yeah.
There isn't much of an in between. But my I have like these go-to techniques that I've sort of developed out of necessity to make
Mm,
sure that I stay fucking sane while in this industry. I I've talked to you about this before. Every morning I read for 1 hour. Reading is like really creatively nourishing for me. And whether it's a book, whether it's articles, whether it's or like I listen to something. So like if I listen to a podcast, I count that as my reading. But that is a non-negotiable. I start my day that way. And then throughout the day, I take like sunshine breaks where, I have these big dogs that need to be walked and active. So I make sure, like, okay, we go out for a walk. I play tennis when I can to get me like out and communicating with people that aren't on my screen or on my tablet that I'm drawing. Um, I set hard boundaries. Sundays, I do not work on Sundays, like ever, under no circumstances.
word.
Um, I find small like self-care things that make me remember to do the other self-care things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Once I start it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's right. I am a human. I need to do these things
yeah,
in order to keep me from completely falling apart and just like fucking myself out
Yeah.
of like my entire studio practice.
Yeah. 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 So I think for me, it's about one, it's about slowing down. I
Yeah.
think when I get out of balance, I find myself in a place where I'm like, it's because I don't think there's another way for me to do something. Right.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
if I'm out of balance and I haven't written in like 2 or 3 days, it's because I think, oh, I don't have time. I got,
Yeah.
all these kids and we got to do this and we got to do that. Like, I just don't have time to do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. So then it's like, okay, well, slow down
Yeah.
and really like think about what you're saying, because really what you're saying is not true. You just got to find that space. You got to find that space.
Right.
You
Right.
gotta make that. This is how I talk to myself. You
Mm.
got to make that space. And so,
Bucket.
yeah. So I slow down, and then a lot of times, my wife will say, "Hey, you need to go write. Like you need to, if that's what
Yeah.
you need to go do it." And
Yeah.
so, I'll make it a point to get out of the house, and I'll sit down, and I think I've said this before, but I just play. I play on the page, right? It's
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
work on something that I've been working on for a while. I start something new and just play and see where it takes me. And
So you
once I
get like writer hangry. That's why your
yeah,
wife is like, go, shoot.
yeah, she's like, "What is wrong with you?" Like, what is
Yeah.
going on? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, have you written? And I'm like, I don't think so.
No.
She's like, okay. I'm like, okay. So yeah, but once I know that, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, then I'm
Yeah.
able to, like I said, slow down, and I'm able to say, hey,
Yeah.
go do it. And I think it sounds like really like maybe cliche or like simplified, but that's really like the main thing that I do is I just,
Yeah.
whatever. And if it's reversed, right, it might be reversed where I'm just
Hmm.
writing all the time and I'm not taking care of home. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you need to do something, do the things that need to be done at the house, wash the dishes, and take out the trash, and do all
Yeah.
those type of
Yeah.
things that, you've been overlooking because you've been in your creative zone. No, okay, now you need to reprioritize some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
That's
you-
really interesting because that's like a thing for me too, is like this external
yeah,
force. Like, for me, it's also like my husband. My husband will be like, hey,
right.
I'm still here.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to like, you want to pay attention to me
I'm
for a little
alive.
bit? Or
Right.
like, hey, you should go like read a book outside in the sunshine. You should go like play some tennis with a friend.
Yeah.
He's really good at sort of bringing me back down to earth and being like, you're a human being. Have you eaten or drank water in the last 8 hours? Because those
Right.
things are necessary.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to Reynaldo. He says, I hate being out of balance, but these are great tips to get back
Yeah.
on track. Yeah, Reynaldo, I hope it helps. Hope they help. Um,
Yeah, there's this rule in painting when you find yourself getting really frustrated and agitated with whatever you're working with on the canvas, you're supposed to leave. Just like
mm,
get up, put it down, go somewhere else, reset your brain, come on back.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think that's art, because I've heard that as a writer as well. Like sometimes you just
Yeah.
gotta go on the
Yeah.
walk
Just
and you gotta do
sit it
something
down.
different. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So for sure, for sure. So now I guess the last thing before we get out of here, because we're getting closer to our time. We came in on time today. Where's
We
Armand?
did. I know, Armand, our time police.
Oh, this is my boy Ron. What's up, man? I didn't know for sure if it was you, so I didn't like take that leap, but now I know. What's
Hey,
good,
Ron.
Ryan? um, so yeah, so Armand's not here today to see us be on time, but it's fine, whatever. Um, so yeah,
Of course
so
he's not.
yeah, right, right. So yeah, so I guess we'll do our quote of the day. Kayla, do you have anything else that you want to say?
I don't think so. I think, every creative goes through trying to figure out what balance means for them. And I would say like don't believe the hype. There's so
Mm,
many people out there that are trying to tell you like this is what your like workflow should like. This is what your schedule should look like if you want to be like a successful artist. There's so many like 5 steps to making sure you're like a professional. You're like, you know, your favorite professional. Don't believe that shit. Like whatever
Yeah.
works for you, whether it's going out and taking sunshine breaks with your dogs, or if it's going and like, I don't know, going cliff diving for an afternoon, whatever you need to do.
Yeah. And we are completely on brand right now because there is no like one like size fits
No,
all.
of course.
Clear answer, right?
This
Like
is the
you
most
gotta
on brand
figure out,
conversation yet.
yeah. You gotta figure out like for you what balance looks like, number one.
Yes.
And then number two, how are you going to achieve that? And it may look different than the next person, but that's okay. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
um I agree with everything that Kayla just said. So let's go ahead and jump into our quote of the day, which is there's no such thing as work-life balance. It is all life. The balance has to be within you. I'm actually not going to try to pronounce.
That's probably a good
Yeah,
life
I'm
choice.
gonna go ahead and leave that.
So
I actually meant to research and see how you say his name.
how to say that?
Yeah, but it slipped my mind, forgot. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I'm gonna
Yeah.
just go ahead and let it ride. Um,
Raw and unedited. So
yeah, for sure.
this
It's all
is
good. It's
how
all
we
good.
do this.
I'll make sure I do that next time.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get out of here. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get out of here, I want to let everybody know that we have a new member of the team. Um, her name is Gaia, and she's amazing. She's a
Yes.
genius when it comes to technology. She's running
Yeah,
behind
she
the
is.
scenes, and I'm just super grateful to have met her and to have her on the squad. And I just wanted to make sure that I gave her a shout out and let everybody know who's pulling the strings, behind the curtain for us.
Yeah, and any like brilliance that you see in the future is all courtesy of Gaia.
For
It's
sure.
not us.
Right. Thank you so much, Guy, for everything that you're doing. And so yeah, so with that being said, please, if you guys would like, if you enjoyed this, just like, subscribe, and share this with somebody that you think might enjoy it. And we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have a great night, and we love you. Be safe.